guys, my name is Ben. I am one of the sponsored players at Nemesis Tactical. I am here with Courtney, and today we are discussing the ASG CZ Scorpion. Can't remember which one this specifically is. I
believe it's the A1, if I'm not mistaken.
I think this one's the A1, yeah. So we're here to chat about it today. This one is mine. This one, unlike the rest of the videos I think we've seen so far, is actually upgraded.
Yeah, I mean, you might have seen in the past two videos I've sort of explained how we're doing the videos for rifle builds. It's going to be a 3-stage thing. So normally there's a part 1 where we get the rifle in from new. The customer or me or one of the sponsored players, whatever the case is, will take that rifle out for a game for the day, see how it performs. I might have a go with it if I get a chance. Then we'll chrono it, see how it sounds, and then we'll give you our first initial thoughts. Now, obviously, this rifle's fairly old now. We've had it. How long have you had it now?
So I think you teched on it a year or so ago. I think it was just over a year.
It's had a service since then as well. So it's been, it's had its running in period. It's been and gone. So that's normally part 1 is, the initial rifle reaction. Now, part 2's also been and gone, because part 2 is where I'm inside the gearbox, teching it, recommending parts and upgrades, etc. And we've basically skipped straight to part 3, which is the review post-upgrade and what would change with the upgrades that I've fitted in it, possibly if at all, and what we'd recommend if you owned one and you wanted to push it to that next stage. But I think for fairness sake, because we haven't got one out of the box to test, what were your first impressions when you got it out of the box from new, that is?
So I did like the performance out of the box new. I thought it's nice and snappy. I was using an 11.1. Now, you're not supposed to, according to ASG, use an 11.1 with this spring. You're not supposed to do it. They say they don't recommend it. They say use I think it's a 9.9 Life-E battery.
Well, I imagine that's purely down to, it's a full stroke piston, which means the piston has all of its teeth, so does the sector gear. And I imagine if you put an 11.1 in it, naturally it's going to up the rate of fire. Yes, you'll get a better trigger response, but your rate of fire is going to go up in tandem with it. Now, what will happen with that is you'll more than likely get premature engagement. You might not, but they've probably said that to A, cover their own arses, and B, so they don't get loads of problems with the rifles coming back, where, say, ammo drop, for instance, or one of our suppliers, who are one of ASG's main sort of distributors, have loads of ASGs coming back on warranty because someone's put an 11.1 in. So I think they have to stipulate that. And to be perfectly honest, I wouldn't, unless you've got a tech on hand and you want to try and kill your rifle, I'd just follow the guidance until the warranty's at least run out.
Yeah.
So you can get your money's worth out of it.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, how much did you pay for it brand new?
So I paid about $350 I paid for it. It might have been fractionally less, but it was around the $350 mark, and with an 11.1, which you're not supposed to use them with, but if you ask a lot of EVO owners, they do use an 11.1 in it, but you shouldn't. I did, and I have to say, the trigger response on semi, I never used it on the 3-round burst. I never used it on the full auto, just on semi, and the snappiness of the trigger out of the box, great, really good. But you are running that risk, so it's very much at your own peril. You can do it, you cannot do it, but if you're in any doubt, follow the recommendation. Use a 9.9 Life-E, I think it is, and don't take any chances unless you are trying to destroy it.
Or send it with a level 1 and get some money towards your tech. Help support local business. But on a serious note, so they're a good out the box gun. Stock for the A1 and the A2, they have a built-in MOSFET, which is a full trigger board MOSFET with micro switches, which is fine. They're not the latest technology out there. They are more than capable for what you need. It will take whatever battery you put in it. You're not going to get any burnout problems. As far as the motor's concerned, you've got the ASG high torque base motor. It's a short shaft, I believe, with a collar on it. That's worth noting. Which is a great motor. It's a very efficient out the box gun. The shimming isn't bad. It's got a decent hop rubber. It's just a standard hop nub and bucking, and a brass barrel. They fire fine out the box from what I've seen. I'd buy one. If I was to recommend a starter gun and you didn't want an M4, an AK or a G36, and you quite fancied the look of this sort of style, especially when you've got some nice external bits on it and whatnot, I'd hands down recommend one of these if you've got a bit of a higher budget to throw at one. It's especially good for younger kids as well. You know, if you say you've got a young lad or you want to take your kids with you, whatever the situation is, and they're not the strongest, let's be honest, kids aren't, you're going to want to give them a lighter rifle such as that. You can collapse the stock right down. You can even get aftermarket parts to fit an M4 buffer tube on it, so you can make it even shorter. There's plenty of things, and the mags aren't a bad shape. They're sort of a 9mm. Are they a 9mm?
Yes,
in real life.
They are 9mm and 9.
So they're that sort of 9mm form factor. These are obviously the slightly chunkier ones, the high caps.
Yeah.
But I think out the box they're like almost. You could probably get away with an MP5 mag holder, I imagine.
Yeah, you would be able to. Yeah. I mean, you can fit generally 2 of the mid caps in an M4 if you just about sort of slide it in right, or you can fit one of the high caps in an M4 pouch, no problem.
So you could get away with, as a starter gun, getting a cheap chest rig. If you can get something with Kydex inserts, I always recommend trying to go down that route just for re-indexing and etc. But that's a topic for another day. They'll fit in most things. They've got decent sling points. Now I do believe Ben's not got his on, but you've got a sling point mount at the back and a sling point mount at the front, which is ambi, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Now most people put a key ring holder through there, if I'm not mistaken, which is a little bit janky. I would have, if it was mine and I was designing it myself, I would have preferred a slightly bigger loophole, or at least provide something that's a little less janky than a key ring holder. But it's down to personal preference. You might be able to fit a carabiner down there, skinny carabiner.
Yeah, potentially so. Yeah.
But yeah, it's not a bad starter gun. So, what made you decide to get it upgraded? We'll skip the part 1 and the part 2 now. We'll get on to what the part 3 of the normal story is. So what made you decide to get it upgraded in the end?
Very straightforward. Probably the same thing that happens to a lot of people. Massive compression loss.
Yes. Well, if memory serves, when I initially opened the gun, it was just old. It had a lot of wear and tear. The piston wasn't in the best condition. The piston head was a little lackluster, to say the least, and the O-ring was all but dead. So we decided to go down the dual sector gear route. So those of you who aren't familiar with SSD or DSG, single sector gear is SSG, DSG is dual sector gear. Now single sector gear is one side of the gear is all teeth, and a dual sector gear has half the amount of teeth on opposing sides. So say you get a very high rate of fire out of a single sector gear, say 30 rounds per second out of a standard 18:1, 16:1 gear ratio. A DSG of the equivalent will get you relatively double that. You probably get 50 rounds per second, so you've got a lot faster rate of fire. But the upside of that is you also get a hell of a lot faster trigger response. Now, you can't do this to every gun on earth within reason, because you've got something called barrel volume in, which is your cylinder volume of how much air is going to go down from that cylinder to the barrel, and it's got to be at least equal. You can slightly over volume for a heavier weight BB, but again that's a subject for another day. Now I wouldn't recommend over at least I think it's a 300mm barrel for a DSG, and this is quite obviously not a 300mm barrel. It's actually a half cylinder, which is slightly less than a DSG gear anyway. So as far as upgrades are concerned, it's a no-brainer to DSG this gun as out the box. If you really wanted to make this gun perform the best it possibly can, there is very few mods you actually have to do to make it perform very good.
Yeah.
I mean, what are your thoughts? Now it's DSG, are you happy with the performance overall? Do you think it's worth the money you put into it? Or
Definitely, yeah, definitely. I mean, I thought the trigger was snappy before, but orders of magnitude snappier now, and it does open up the possibility of, now it has been upgraded, it does open up the possibility of, you know, using 3-round burst, using full auto. I mean, with a DSG you have to go a bit steady with DSGs and full auto, because the chances of overkilling are very, well, not very high, but there is an increased risk there.
yeah, if you don't have a little bit of self-control, we've built, the way I've designed this DSG, it's a slow rate of fire but snappy, reliable DSG build. The idea is you don't actually have to change the motor, so you're probably getting mid to high 30 rounds per second. I'd estimate about 35 RPS. We've not actually tested the RPS count to see what it does. I've never really been bothered. I didn't build that with that in mind. What I wanted to do was see what sort of budget we can build a DSG on and what components we needed to do it. Now, if you notice earlier in the video I said it's got a good quality high torque motor in, which is the ASG base motor. There is no need to change the motor on this if you don't feel like it. Now, in this particular build, the gearbox list I've done, I've kept the original tappet plate, trimmed the fin, which I'll explain in a further video, changed the sector gear to an SHS DSG gear. You can either use SHS or Rocket. It's the same OEM manufacturer, it's just the quality control is different between Rocket over SHS. I do recommend you try an SHS over the Rockets, just if you don't know what you're looking for as far as quality control goes. So I've trimmed the tappet plate, changed it to a dual sector gear, made sure it's got a ball bearing spring guide, changed the piston for an SHS blue, which is what I like, or an Aztec Innovations piston, which I highly recommend. They're a very good quality piston, and the piston head to suit. Now again, I recommend the Aztec Innovations one. There's a little bit of bias. I'm quite good on a good relationship with the owner of Aztec, who I'm helping him develop a new product, but we shan't take that any further just yet. Now, we've done piston head, ball bearing spring guide. If you can get the air nozzle to change it for an O-ringed one, because they don't come out of the box with an O-ringed air nozzle, but the air compression isn't bad on the standard one. The cylinder head, there's no need to change. The cylinder should be fine. Check for scratches and wear and tear, but it shouldn't have any. You'll have to shimmy gears, including the DSG gear, to make sure it's all meshing correctly. And the one major mod that takes time that you'll have to do is cut in an anti-reversal catch. These don't have an anti-reversal catch for the gears, which is to stop your gears reversing backwards. Now, it's not necessary on the single sector gear build. The way it's designed and the torque of the motor, you don't need one. It wouldn't do any harm to have one, but you don't need one. That's why they've not fitted one out of the factory. Now for the DSG, you most certainly need one, or you're going to get more issues than I care to talk about. It's really easy to fit. On here you've got 2 base screws, and then there's a screw just up here on the gearbox. You're going to take that screw out, get an anti-reversal catch that you can preferably split in half, so you can take the centre pin out and just take the actual catch itself. And then you're going to basically cut out a little section of the gearbox, which I'll show at some point on a video on the how-to guide of the website. Be sure to check that out in the future. And you basically use the screw to keep it in place, but from the other side, and then you cut the screw head off. And all that'll do, it'll stop the gears from reversing, because obviously you're running a much stronger spring in a DSG gear, setup. Now that's another thing we have to change, is the spring. Now say your stock spring is a sort of, I imagine it's probably an M100. A DSG like this, which is a slow DSG mind you, is probably sort of an M135 or up. I found an M135 spring put us at about 340 FPS, 343 I think it was last I checked. It's been a while, without getting premature engagement. I did try an M140 I think it was, but it put us over the 350 mark. I thought, you know what, it's a quick change spring, drop an M135 in there, it's not getting premature engagement, it's sounding lovely, why add more stress to the gearbox? So like I said, we've now got a ball bearing piston head, upgraded piston head, decent quality piston, either SHS or Aztec, the correct quick change spring guide with ball bearings, upgraded air nozzle with an O-ring, original motor, anti-reversal catch, SHS dual sector gear, the original trigger board, which is fine, the original trigger, the original bushings as well, which if I'm not mistaken are the ASG 8mm graphite bushings. I might be incorrect, but if memory serves, they are a very good quality bushing as long as they're lubricated. Yeah. Another thing we changed on it for longevity is the hop rubber and nub. We actually went with the Maple Leaf MR hop in the end, which is like, I swear by this hop rubber now, as far as most of the people I know and my customers etc. run a 2.8 BB or higher. Unless they're playing CQB, then you're just wasting money. We are mostly woodland players. It is a far better hop rubber than the out the box hop rubber. I always recommend a Maple Leaf MR hop and the Omega nub just to drop in there. It drops in pretty simply. While the brass barrel's out, give it a good polish and a good clean. Make sure there's no nasty build-ups on there or anything like that. If you need to, I didn't need to on this particular build, use a bit of tape, electrical tape around the outside of the barrel to make sure there's no wobble, and then just trim it off nicely around the front and the back with a Stanley blade. I didn't find that I needed that on this. They're a well built bit of kit. So basically now we have a finished DSG. It's been running on and off for 2 years, at least 2.5 years.
Should be about 2 years, yeah.
We've had a few tappet plate springs break. That seems to be the common occurrence with the DSG on this particular build. But may I note, with the ASG tappet plate springs, I've since fitted an SHS tappet plate spring. It's been flawless.
Yeah.
Now, one thing I have forgot to mention before I forget with a DSG build, you do have to trim and shorten the tappet plate spring, as well as trim the fin on the tappet plate. If you don't, it's not going to pull back quick enough to cope with how much faster the gearbox cycles. But that's pretty much, my bit done on this. What do you think now it's officially done as a DSG? Is it reaching out the same as it used to, or would you say less or more?
It's definitely reaching further out than it was before.
Yeah,
definitely.
Well, I mean that would probably be because it's got a better, more consistent compression.
Yeah.
The MR hop helps. We're in a 2.8, which it might not travel quite as far as a 2.5, but it's more consistent at range. And with the MR hop, it just gives it that extra bit of a backspin just to get it out there. Yeah,
I mean this is definitely outperforming a lot of other rifles. I will be able to hit people consistently when other people with stock guns, rental guns will be falling way short. This is able to reach out and get people. Yeah. And for a barrel length of what, about that? Roughly?
Yeah, it's sort of, say, I think it's about 240 mil. Don't quote me on that. I've not measured it for donkeys. But it does. It's a more than admirable gun. And like we said, if you're thinking about getting this either as a starter gun or as a secondary or as your primary, do it. I can't recommend it enough. I mean, your thoughts?
Yeah, I definitely recommend it as a starter gun. I mean, it is a little on the pricey side,
Yeah, it is more of a premium line.
Yeah, I mean, £350 depending where you're looking. I mean, it's I can see why it would put some people off.
I mean, how much are your high cap bags?
They are £30 roughly, depending where you look. They are like £30 for one high cap, or you can get a pack of 3 mid caps for I think it's about £50. So depending where you look, you may be paying a little bit more, a little bit less, but that's roughly the going rate for the mags. And I mean, I've had these high caps for quite a while, and they still feed absolutely fine, absolutely fine. I mean, I'd kind of bought it with, I bought the rifle as a kind of nice sort of, I can play it in the woodland, I can use it for CQB. I bought it as a kind of
every time I see you just go out for a game, you tend to use this as your primary rifle, and you've got a large gun collection, really.
Yes.
So it speaks volumes when you see someone who has a large rifle collection of any form, and they'll have a go-to gun, which is normally the best upgraded one. And as far as parts are concerned, this is one of the more simple upgrades you've got.
Yeah.
And it's still your primary, and if you're going to lend anyone a gun, it's normally this, because it's just going to run.
Yeah.
Aside from, like we said, we've had 2 or 3 incidents that tappet plate springs have broke.
Yeah.
Which is there's sod all you can do about it, really. If you've got a trim and tappet plate spring, it's more than likely going to break after a while.
Yeah.
Assuming you've not bought one with that in mind, and it's like an SHS one, or I know Aztec Innovations have a tappet plate spring, which is a lot stronger than an out the box spring, which I'm still yet to test. Which I do believe, if I'm not mistaken, you can just drop that in a DSG, but I do need to test it.
Yeah. I mean, it is one of those things that, for how good these are out of the box, they are pretty common. If you've been airsofting, if you go to like a site or a couple of different sites, chances are you will see an EVO of one flavour or another, whether it's the short one, whether it's the BET, whether it's the carbide. Usually at least 1 or 2 people seem to knock around with them.
I mean, there's quite a lot of aftermarket parts as well. If you're not so sure about the front end or the mag or the stock, you can just about change the whole thing. Like we've got a 3D printer here at Nemtac, and we've seen some really nice looking front ends for these that are 3D printed, which are a bit more M4 flavoured, if that makes sense. So it changes the overall design of the gun. You can get different stocks for it if you wanted to rear wire it, if you were so desired. I'm sure there's a mod out there. There's a large modding community for these.
Yeah.
So overall, you can do quite a lot with them. You can put a nice suppressor on them, make it more of like get that sort of MP5 SD flavour up and going with it.
Yeah.
They're just a cool little gun. I mean, I personally didn't like the look of them when they first came out. I just outright rejected them. I'm more of an AK man myself. But after working on this one, having a few games with it, I actually quite like them. I can't fault them. I will happily recommend one myself as a tech. It's just a spot on little gun.
That is high praise indeed. Very high praise.
But yeah, I think that's really, we've covered just about all the bases. Can you think of anything we've not done?
I mean, not really. I mean, it is one of those things like, this is the kind of, this is a solid investment. If you can pick one of these up for second hand, chances are you're probably going to be quids in, because you can have a lot of fun with these, whether it's in the woodland, whether it's in CQB. Chances are with the right upgrades in there, you'll be laughing. I mean, it's one of those things. I can't get over how common they are and how easy they are to get hold of, even second hand, even buying them in completely broken, and you can fix them up and just get a really, really nice rifle out of them.
Yeah, I mean, I could argue they're almost replacing the G36 as far as commonality goes. I mean, back in the day when I was first playing airsoft, everyone had a G36 or has had a G36. Now I'm tending to see the trend of people owning sort of a Scorpion EVO or something like that as your base rifle.
Yeah.
If the price was right and you had an airsoft site and you had the money to invest in something, say 10 rifles, and you could get them at the right price break, they'd actually be a pretty wise investment for a site rental, obviously price depending.
Yeah. If
you could pick a few up second hand, they'd make an excellent little rental. As far as tech work goes, they're really simple.
Yeah.
And you can actually pick up a whole gearbox if you need to. So if you were to buy one of these and you're not particularly tech minded, just go to say Ammo Drop, who supply these guys, and I'm sure they could source you just a whole gearbox. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all we've got to say on it. It's a good little rifle. There'll be a video coming out. I have got one in stock. There'll be a video of me teching on one soon to show the alterations I'm going to do to the gearbox to basically do the same build as this. And also on the website there's going to be a how-to guide coming very soon. Now on there'll be this particular rifle on how to DSG, which will have a written guide on how it's done. It'll probably have a link to this video, and there'll also be a link to another video we're going to do of like I said, the teching one. So you've pretty much got an exact walkthrough of how to do it.
Yeah.
So as a Scorpion Evo owner, if you're not sure and you want to have a go at it yourself, there'll be guides there. We will try and stock the parts and have the link on that how-to guide, so you can just add all the parts we've got in this straight to your basket. And if not, I'll make sure I'll link the relative websites you can get the parts off on there. So yeah, I think that's pretty much everything covered.
Yeah.
Don't forget to like and subscribe. Check the website out. Check all the social medias out, and thanks for watching. Cheers, guys.
Thanks very much. Cheers.